Motion to open the regular meeting of the Village Board of Trustees for May 10th, 2021. Do I have a motion? Okay, Trustee Knapp moved it and I need a second. Deputy Mayor Underhill seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Right, the meeting is open and we start with my report. First, I want to give a huge thank you to so many groups who are collaborating with us this spring to make the village so beautiful. Both the Bronxville beautification in Boulder Ledge are helping even more with Village Triangles and our work in Bacon Woods Park. Just this Saturday, the Pollinator Pathway Committee of our Green Committee, a local scout troop, and some of our middle schoolers did a huge cleanup and planting at the Bacon Woods. And honestly, on my way back today from lunch, I saw a group of middle schoolers planting flowers at Bicentennial Park. These groups are always incredibly helpful, but we are getting unprecedented help from all corners of the village. And I just want to thank everybody for their collaboration. Just a little preview to our residents. As you know, we finished the operating budget and the village trustees will now be on to a capital budget. A little sampling is some improvements to the aforementioned Bacon Woods Park, the Sagamore Play Park, the Midland and Pontfield intersection upgrades, and of course, our big expenditure on road repaving and curbing. Just on this subject, there's a bit of confusion on the responsibilities for sidewalks. The sidewalk is the responsibility of the homeowner, the apartment, or the co-op. I happened to be up on Sagamore Road just the other day, and there's a lot of sidewalks in bad repair, just as an example. So anyone, homeowner, co-op, apartment, if you notify us when you're doing repairs, we will try to coordinate with you and perhaps fix the curbing, which is the village's responsibility. Now, just on to another issue, I just want to untangle some misunderstandings that are out there as to the Maltby parking lot property. The chronology is this: the village and New York Presbyterian Lawrence got together to discuss parking. And this goes way back to, frankly, 2018. We were discussing it in a collaborative way, as we do with any village partner, be it the Bronxville School, Concordia. We were happy to engage in exploratory discussions, and we did have a concept drawing done by Walker Consultants, the premier parking structure consultant, to see if a structure of any kind on the Maltby property was even feasible. And of course, we had the property surveyed. As a result of the survey, we learned there could be a possible issue with unclear deeds relating to parking, even though the property has been used for parking for upwards of 60 years. Following the proper processes, we brought this to the attention of county government, who directed us both to the Parks Board and their legal department for a ruling. This is where the deed use issue is pending right now. Since this issue could prove to be an issue which could cause any concept to be a non-starter, both the hospital and the village were fiscally prudent and did not spend any more money on concept drawings. Sorry, I'm getting some static there, sorry. We did not spend any more money on concept drawings so as not to waste taxpayer dollars. Net, the idea under discussion is a concept, not a project. If, and it is a big if, any concrete ideas should materialize, they would be immediately shared with the public for their input, as well as full vetting by the planning and zoning boards in a very comprehensive process. However, it has come to our board's attention with no prior notice that 2 letters were sent by residents, one to the Parks Department written by Betsy Harding and then signed by 7 households, and another sent from a Gmail account entitled Bronxville Dems. Unfortunately, both letters were replete with misinformation. I don't have time to touch on all the issues, but I want to clarify a few important ones. There is no plan, secret or not, to do anything to Palmer Hall. There was never any discussion whatsoever to remove the paddle courts. And similarly, there was never an idea that the farmers market could not stay in their current location if they so choose. Regrettably, both these letters reached me and my fellow trustees from outside third parties who thought we should be aware. Honestly, so much of the misinformation and confusion could have been dispelled early on if conversations with the village board were requested. We remain here and always willing and available should anyone want to speak to us on any issue, including Maltby. It has always been a hallmark of our village government and quality interaction to reach out to us directly, and we proudly hope to continue this tradition. That is the end of my report. Trustees, I give you an opportunity if you want to weigh in at this juncture or later in the meeting. Okay, Bill Fredericks, Trustee Fredericks.
Yeah, I'll just weigh in briefly. I think that the salient points that you touched on, Mayor, were also touched upon at the special meeting of the board on April 22nd, where there was some discussion on this, and I think there was helpful clarification from you, Mayor, on these points. And I think that there was also discussion at that time that all trustees felt very strongly that a robust notice and opportunity to be heard process would come into play if and when an actual proposal, as opposed to a concept, was vetted. I guess I would just say, the signatories of correspondence and the Bronxville Democratic Committee can speak for themselves. I think that there was probably just a lack of communication on certain points. I don't think I take a position one way or another as to whether communication couldn't have been better at various points, but I think the clarification is helpful, and I, for one, am sympathetic to the concerns that people have an opportunity to be heard. I'll just say that I was chairman of the zoning board for the hospital's last expansion. And as I told some people, I was not very happy with the hospital procedurally in that context, because I think that they made some representations to the zoning board in that process, which were, I'll just say, were not entirely correct. So I approach this with the perspective of having been to a version of this rodeo before, which respects both the role of the hospital, but I think puts primary emphasis on the process. And so without making any further, lengthening my speech any further, I just wanted to say I appreciate the clarification. I appreciate that people may have been concerned. I appreciate that everyone may not have been on our earlier April board meeting where some of these clarifications were also made, and I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, trustee, and I appreciate you referencing the April meeting as well. Thank you, Bill. Any other trustees?
Mary?
Trustee Behrens.
If you could just give because we have a lot of people on that maybe weren't on that former meeting that you and Bill referenced, could you just give them where we are with the status with the Westchester County Parks Department and Westchester County in general with respect to this, this process?
Yes, we gave a second presentation to the Parks Department. And council, I may need your help, so I say this absolutely correctly. The chairman of the Parks Department was concerned that the issue may not be theirs and was asking for some clarification from the county legal department. He was also going to send us a template for some additional information he wanted, but we have not received that request yet. So we are waiting to hear from both the county legal department and the county parks chairman. And I believe they have a meeting May 20th. So the thought is hopefully we will hear something well prior to that. That's the update. Council, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Any other trustee comments on any topic? And trustees, feel free to interject at any point. Okay.
I'll just make, well, sorry.
Yes.
I'll just make one comment that not repeating anything anybody's said already, but I just think it's very important to say, you know, we as a village have a very strong commitment to the green spaces in our community. And I think we've demonstrated that, you know, consistently with what we're doing in the village to keep our finite green resources open and available, and to have recreational spaces. It's such an important part of the quality of life of the village. So all that is going to be taken, you know, very seriously into consideration whenever, if ever, this project gets to the point, or you know, that we are looking at actual plans as opposed to a concept.
Thank you, trustee Knapp. And I think it's important to mention there is a little confusion. If anything should come, it would not encroach on the footprint of any open space that currently exists now. Currently, it is a parking lot, and there was no even concept to take away from what is currently used as a parking lot. Green space removal is out of the question. All right, I think we will move on to our village administrator's report. Mr. Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple items. First and foremost, just a reminder to everyone that since the village does operate a municipal separate storm sewer system, what's more commonly known as an MS4 system, we are required to file a report with the Department of Environmental Conservation annually, identifying our responses to 6 minimum measures, and I just wanted to emphasize those for our viewers. Those 6 minimum measures that the village has to follow include: 1, public education and outreach, how we're advising the community of our stormwater management efforts. And that's those are inclusive of notices, flyers, presentations such as this, our website information that we post, emails that we send. Second item is public involvement, public input, and those include items such as when our advisory groups, like the Bronx River Advisory Group, does some presentations in the community. It even includes items that the Green Committee is working on and the efforts to do some plantings, Mayor, as you mentioned over the weekend. Minimum control measure number 3 is illicit discharges. It's the village's responsibility to respond to complaints about a potential illicit discharge. We had 1 complaint regarding a potential illicit discharge last year, which the village followed through on. And then there are the additional minimum control measures include construction site management, overseeing the various construction projects in the village and making sure that contractors are complying with requirements such as protecting catch basins from stormwater runoff. And then the final minimum control measure, which communities must respond to, is our municipal operations. That is the work of the DPW, that we clean out our catch basins, that we use a street sweeper to pick up the dirt. All these are our efforts to protect the village's municipal separate storm sewer system and runoff. As I said, we follow this report annually, and the new report is completed, and we'll post it on the village's website under the Public Works Department page. Again, despite the pandemic over the course of the past year, the village did a lot of great things. Starting in reverse with the municipal operations, obviously, we're finishing the construction of a new DPW building, which is going to have a truck washing bay on the inside, which means we'll be washing our fleet regularly, and we'll have a separate separator, if you will, to remove all the salt from those vehicles into a separate drain where the salt is separated. But it's important that we maintain our fleet. And as I said with the earlier items, we work with the building department to oversee the construction of private development and contractor compliance. And then the other items are always ongoing. And so if anyone wants to view that report, it will be available on the village website. I also just wanted to mention that Trustee Knapp and I had met with Ellen Edwards of the Green Committee to discuss the wonderful efforts of the findings that the Green Committee has been doing on the leaf blower ordinance. This is something that we've all received numerous calls about, especially with residents working from home. So something that Helen and I wanted to suggest is that we have Ellen come to potentially the June meeting, or make a presentation at the June meeting, which would include their findings of what their recommendations are, and also ordinances that have been recently put into effect or are going to affect in other communities. So we have the benefit of seeing what some of the other communities have recently adopted. So we'll have that presentation, but it would be our anticipation that we would be able to have legislation that the board could consider, or amendments to our existing legislation that the board can consider over the summer, and continue that and start a public hearing in the fall with the hopes of implementing the additional regulations in 2022. And the only other item I wanted to mention was the next Take Back Day is going to be coming up on June 5th. And that's something we'll be doing outreach on, and the Green Committee works on spearheading that. This spring, we're going to have go back to when we used the elementary school for the county's mobile shredder. We think that'll work best. So the county's mobile shredder will be in the elementary school lot, and that'll allow the additional traffic to queue up on Midland Avenue southbound. And then the collection of the other items, such as the e-waste and the other clothing items, will be done along Palumbo Place. So that's it.
Jim, just a quick question. Sorry, Mayor.
Yeah.
Is it too late for residents to still to take the survey that's online, or has that been closed down? Do you know? Because I don't know if everyone's taken the survey.
I would say they, it should still be up. They can take the survey.
Okay, so I guess we just, as a trustee board, we would encourage everyone who hasn't taken the survey on the leaf blower to take the survey.
All right, we will move on to approval of our board minutes, and I need a motion to approve the April 12th minutes of our regular annual meeting, as well as the April 22nd minutes of our special meeting and adoption of the 21-22 budget. Do I have a motion to that effect? Okay, we had trustee Behrens move it, trustee Frederick second it, and all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And again, thank our wonderful assistant, Mary Ann, for her usual quality minutes. Mr. Palmer, we have 5 resolutions tonight. Do you want to give a preview of the first one?
Sure. First one, this is an annual item, and this is the board acknowledging receipt of the completion of the Justice Court examination. This is a task that's performed by the village treasurer, and an acknowledgement of the examination being completed, and then directing us to follow that with the Office of Court Administration. And this is the examination of the Justice Court records. These would be the review of the Justice Court, each justice's account and the monies that they've taken in over the course of the past year. Since we run a year behind on the court audits, this is for the audit ending May 31 of 2020. So you have a report on the collection of all their monies. As is customary, of course, we also forward these to the justices in advance of or after it's completed. For any additional comments, we received none. So if the board can just acknowledge completion of that and authorize me to report it to the Office of Court Administration.
Oh, I just want to add that our justices are going to come to the July meeting and give us sort of a state of the court, and especially, frankly, some of the major COVID effects on our court. So we will all hear from our 2 justices at the July meeting. But I need a motion to acknowledge our Justice Court audit. Do I have a motion? Okay, it was moved by Deputy Mayor Underhill and seconded by Trustee Fredericks. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, and the next item is to authorize the village treasurer as well as myself to complete transfers to begin to close out the 2021 fiscal year budget. And that, so this resolution involves completing transfers from within accounts that might be slightly overdrawn to other areas within the department. And again, as I always do, I'll send the board a full accounting of where we are year to date for all the different departments. And then likewise, what you're also authorizing is for the 21-22 year is, while every department needs to stay within their budget, there are some exceptional circumstances where a department might be over in supplies or what have you, and we might move some monies, remove those over the course of the year from within another line item within that department.
Any questions for Mr. Palmer on that particular resolution? Yes,
Yeah,
Trustee Knapp.
what amounts are typically involved with these kind of, interdepartmental transfers? Just
Usually,
roughly.
usually, again, it's usually small amounts. If there's anything significant, for example, if the board had approved a contractual agreement with one of our collective bargaining units, then you would authorize, that obviously would be significant monies, and you'd be authorizing that, and we'd be effectuating a transfer from, say, the contingency account. But in this case, it might be slightly over in a part-time line. Supply item might be common, or a contract that we have might have been slightly higher. But again, we pull the monies from within that departmental account.
Mhm.
If that makes any sense. Otherwise, you'll as always, you'll get a full detailed accounting of where we are fiscal year to date.
Mhm.
Okay, any other questions on that particular issue? Okay, seeing none, I need a motion to authorize the year-end budget transfers. Who would like to move it? Okay, trustee Knapp is moving it, and trustee Behrens is seconding it. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes.
Okay, the next items require scheduling public hearings for a couple matters. The first one is for some additional changes to our vehicle and traffic law. Again, we're making several of these. We've been doing several of these over the course of the past couple of years to update some of our traffic control devices. So we have a few items to consider as part of scheduling this public hearing for changes to the traffic V&C chapter of the Village Code. The first is to add stop signs in both directions on Northwest Way, both at the intersection of North Way and also at the intersection of West Way. Surprisingly, when I compared that to the code versus what's actually on site, we do not have stop signs on Northwest Way at the intersection of North Way or at the intersection of West Way. So the public hearing is for adding those, and I've met with the most impacted resident as well as the chief of police regarding that intersection. We should have those added there. The other item also involves two additional no parking zones. One as the result of the construction of 100 White Plains Road, the property on the corner of Paddington Road. The approval of that project by our land use board required the addition of a no parking zone from the intersection of Route 22, 30 feet east on Paddington Road, 30 feet back from the intersection. There should be no parking as you get closer to 22. Again, that was in conjunction with the development of that project, that improvement. And then the other one comes from a request on the Hilltop, addition of a no parking area in the vicinity of Paradise Road where it intersects with Gladwin and Sunset. That's a very tight spot. It's a very narrow area. We tried to get compliance without the no parking signage, but we've been unsuccessful. So if you could schedule a public hearing for those amendments to the vehicle and traffic law.
Okay, and I just think, just as to reiterate what Jim has said, these were discussed or initiated by nearby homeowners and also vetted by the police department.
Can I ask about the corner of Orchard Place and Summit? Do you know what I'm talking about, that on Summit going onto Orchard Place? It's a T. There's no stop sign on Summit as you're going into Orchard Place.
No stop sign on Summit as you're approaching Orchard.
So literally you could,
Okay.
you could drive right into, you could take a right or left onto Orchard Place, which is kind of and it's a little bit blocked by bushes. So as we're talking about stop signs, I just want to ask about that one. I was.
Helen,
Stop.
I will go out there with the police chief. We can inspect that location. It seems like that should have a stop sign on Summit then at the intersection. Yeah.
Okay. Any other trustee comments?
Jim, just further to trustee Knapp's question, I take it that if a request is made to add a stop sign from a resident, that there's a process that those get funneled to you in due course? Jim?
Absolutely, yes. If there's a request, they can send it to me, and then I usually make arrangements to do a site visit with the chief of police and confirm that it will be in compliance with the Uniform Traffic Control Device Handbook, et cetera.
Okay. All right, then I need a motion to schedule a public hearing for our June meeting for these vehicle and traffic amendments. Do I have a motion? Okay, trustee Fredericks moved it, and a second.
Second.
Deputy Mayor Underhill seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So we will have that public hearing in June. Jim Palmer, what is the date of the June meeting?
The June meeting is Monday, the 14th, Monday,
14th.
June 14th. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
yep, good point. Okay, and then the next item following our discussions on amending our Peace and Good Order chapter of the Village Code to prohibit smoking in certain places is now ready for your consideration and for scheduling a public hearing if you're so inclined.
I think it's important to note that we had our work session just the other day, pretty much totally on this topic, and decided to move forward on this issue in increments, much like our municipal colleagues. So this is a first step in looking at the whole issue of public space smoking. Trustees, any other comments on that particular issue?
I guess I just had a lingering question from the last meeting with respect to the school premises. The school board itself has its own authority to regulate smoking, and there are state laws regulating smoking on school premises. So just to clarify, the fact that the school is not specifically mentioned in the statute is really just sort of a matter of jurisdiction that's being handled by other laws and other boards.
Yeah, thank you, trustee Fredericks. All right.
And then,
Sorry. Yeah.
we also talked about that the village is, there are other villages in Westchester that have these kind of similar code amendments where they do not allow smoking in certain areas. So we're in some sense, we're catching up with some other villages in Westchester that have already enacted this.
Exactly. And I think part of it, I think I can speak for all of you, that we wanted to roll it out carefully, slowly, and frankly, see how the implementation and the enforcement went before adding on additional pieces. So this is a start, both, as trustee Barron said, to catch up to some of our neighbors and stay in sync with other neighbors. So
Mayor, I don't know, did you want to just highlight the areas where smoking will be prohibited, or?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful if.
Jim, you can read the amendment if you want. That's a good point.
Sure. So following our meeting, smoking and vaping is prohibited in all the following places within the village of Bronxville. A, all village-owned parks. B, all village-owned playgrounds and recreational facilities, including but not limited to paddle courts and tennis courts. C, Bronxville Village Hall property, and D, Bronxville Library property.
Perfect, thank you. That helps clarify what this first public hearing is about. So I need a motion to schedule this public hearing on the Peace and Good Order Amendment for our June 14th meeting. Do I have a motion? Trustee Barron's moved it. I need a second. And Trustee Frederick seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Vote. Motion passes. All right, and our final resolution as to surplus equipment.
Yes, and of course, Mayor, we do this from time to time. So there are several pieces of equipment that we have either replaced or are no longer using. And there's a list of those. They include some of the older Ford Explorers that were used by the police department. As you know, after we remove all the equipment that we can utilize, the computers, et cetera, whatever lighting that we can reuse. And following our removal of all the Bronxville lettering and seals, et cetera, we'll put those items out for bid on our on the website company that we use for surplus equipment, our vendor. We also have an old welder machine that's reached its useful life. There's an item in here called snap-on disc and drums. We used to actually, our mechanic used to do a lot of the repairs on the brakes themselves and on the rotors, but now it's more cost effective to replace them than to use that equipment. And then there were some light bars that are the older light bars that are not LED, that won't be used on our new police vehicles. So if you could just authorize those 6 items as surplus items, and we'll put them out on our website for bidding.
And just a comment, we've been doing it now for quite a while, but we do so much better since we transferred this to public auction. So these will be sent out for public auction. So do I have a motion authorizing the sale of our surplus equipment? Okay, a Deputy Mayor Underhill moved it, and I need a second. Second from Trustee Knapp. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And trustees, before I open it to parties who wish to address the board, I don't know if anyone has some final trustee comments. Okay, seeing none, this is a time where anyone can comment on any topic, and I would just ask you to be mindful and respectful of a 3-minute limit to your comments. All right, is there anyone that would like to make a comment? Yes, Miss Hardy.
Hi. Well, yes, I did in fact write a letter to the Parks Board, but before I did that, and I'm sorry you were offended by it or whatever, but at the last Village Trustees meeting, I brought up this proposed parking structure during the public comment period. And nobody said anything then about this is just a concept or we're just talking about it. It seemed to be fairly well, you know, not detailed plans, but it seemed to be beyond the concept stage. And I attended the Park Board's meeting that Thursday that was online. And you gave a very good presentation about the hospital's desire to expand and what they would like to do. And they want to have more doctors' offices and more services provided at the hospital and, you know, become a very premier health provider in Southern Westchester. And I have some problems. I did a lot of research on the history of the deeds and the transfer of the land back in around 1950, and just that the entire rerouting of the Bronx River and, you know, all sorts of things. Anyway, and I had a number of comments that I felt the Parks Board should hear. And so I sent them a letter, and a bunch of other people felt the same way and signed on to the letter. So I don't think anybody's really caught anybody by surprise. And I looked at the slide presentation that you had wanted to present at that Parks Board meeting, but they couldn't handle the technology. So then it was sent out via email, and I saw that. And that has these drawings from the Walker consulting firm. And there were at least two different footprints suggested for the for this, possible parking garage. And one of them completely took up Stone Place, and the other one then overlapped into the field part of the Maltby Park and overlapped a little bit with the paddle courts. So I think it's fair to say that there would be quite an impact if any kind of a parking structure was built along the lines of, what they were outlining. And I certainly understand that this is not, it's not the level of a drawings you would send out to bid, because, they're not that detailed. But it certainly gives an idea of what was being contemplated and how large the footprint would have to be to accommodate the number of spaces that it appears the village or the hospital is proposing, which is a lot. I mean, it was at least 500, according to the count that I made, based on the diagrams that were sent to the Parks Board. So probably most people don't want to wade into that level of depth because it gets a little tedious, but I happen to find these things interesting. And there's just no question that the hospital is certainly very serious about doing this, and they seem to want to expand. I think I applaud you for committing to having a very open process here. If I had known that this would be discussed at that other village, the special board meeting, I would have attended, but I thought that one was just about the budget. So in any case, if anybody wants to read the Parks Board letter, feel free to call me or email me, and I'll be happy to send it to anybody who wants to read it. But
I would be, we are at a time limit, but I would enjoy sitting down with you and reviewing some of those things in the letter, because I respectfully disagree with some of the assertions, and I would be happy to sit with you and share our history, our research, and perhaps our views. So please call on me, and I'm available for an in-person anything.
sure, yeah, I'm happy to do that. I did file a FOIL request for all the whatever documents you have in your possession from the Walker Consultants.
We have that ready for tomorrow. We have that ready.
Great, thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
Any other Trustee Fredericks, did you wanted to interject here?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the concept plans that were circulated to the trustees, and I think that the plans are a little ambiguous, because as I read them, they sort of show a rectangle extending in a manner that overlaps the paddle tennis courts, but I think that was done just for graphic purposes to show certain measurements. So I think this just goes to show that they are sort of concept drawings. I don't think anyone has sort of flyspecced them carefully. And I just want to say, with regard to Betsy's comment, that again, I think some of the submissions that I've seen for the village also, the wording could have been more careful, and I think that's just what happens sometimes in the course of doing work. And again, I commend your efforts, Mayor, and Ms. Harding's efforts to just bring more light rather than heat on these issues. I think it will be helpful for all concerned. So I commend the efforts on both sides. And it's not really sides, it's from citizens, from the mayor, and et cetera.
I think that's well said. And I just want to reiterate that regardless how any plan was interpreted, we are not taking any grass space, any paddle space, any farmer's market space. That's simply not going to happen.
Well, and to reiterate, there may not even be a workable proposal at the end of it.
There might not ever be a proposal,
Let alone one that's approved.
quite frankly.
I
Yes.
would like to comment if possible.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, hi, Jennifer Kaleo, village resident. And I would like to make 2 points that I think are very important to consider. And again, I understand this is a process and likely a lengthy one, but I do think it's important to consider that building any large structure impacts the feel of Maltby Park, whether you encroach on any green space or not. Years ago, there was a proposal to build a high rise in Central Park, which people opposed for the same reason, that once you have tall buildings near green space, that space becomes less desirable. So I think that's just a very important point to consider. That I also believe, as a related point, that Maltby Park could be a beautiful park in our village. And I'm not 100% sure if there have been plans for the park ever proposed, in that we could have playground space, have benches, we could have seating for senior citizens. It could be a gathering place in our village that it's not. And I think that's something that should certainly be part of any proposal, that if there is a way to improve the park and incorporate a parking garage, maybe that's possible. But it certainly makes no sense to me to add parking but not consider whether that's the best use of the park space. And then I would just like to add, if I have time, that it is an important consideration that Lawrence Hospital is not a tax-paying entity. They are a nonprofit and they do not pay taxes to the village. And it's my understanding that they have resisted the idea of being a contributing taxpayer unless we also tax our other nonprofits, which are churches. I have a feeling that the churches are not using our police department to the extent that Lawrence Hospital is. I read the weekly police spotter on a regular basis, and our police are called there quite often. So they are availing themselves of services that the village of Bronxville taxpayers pay for. And I think that needs to be a consideration in us being willing to spend money for the hospital. So I think that's a very important point that needs to be part of the broader picture here. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a little background. We did get, we looked at Maltby, and to be quite honest, I was able to get a $175,000 grant from State Senator Klein, who was a great friend of the village's, just to clean up that park as a start. We had to take approximately 6 inches of soil removal because there were frankly broken bottles and such in there. And we spent the entire 175 just kind of bringing it to a level of pristine quality. And we actually even offered the space to the school if they needed some recreational space, but the configuration and the busy roads and the dangers of balls landing out in the street didn't make it a safe venue for school teams. And I totally agreed with them. But point well taken that Maltby, it has a few benches. It could be a lot nicer. And just as we're working on Bacon Woods, we need to turn our attention to Maltby as well. Thank you. Okay. Any other comments from anyone on any topic?
Mayor, I think there was Joan Golan had her hand up. I don't know if she wanted to comment.
Thank you. Yeah,
Hi,
thank
Joan.
you, Jim. I'm not going to show you myself because I'm covered with poison ivy. But first of all, on the parking lot, I am totally confused. I would really appreciate whether in hometown Bronx or something that the whole situation could be laid out, because I was at that Parks meeting and it's just murky. I'm not clear. And I mean, as somebody who doesn't drive and is frustrated because the local doctors that are associated with the hospital, you know, you have to travel somewhere to see them. They're not at the hospital. So I'm open to more access to doctors, but then, you know, there's a parking lot over there. My friends who drive tell me it's never full. Or if you need extra stories, why not put it there? Why Maltby Park? I mean, just, you know, maybe Mary, in your column, in the mayor's column, you know, just lay out the arguments. I mean, also there's this issue of why should Lawrence Hospital not pay? Why should we pay? What's the benefit to the residents? And then, you know, and I admit I'm a member of the local Dems, you know, the rebuttal. I'd really like to see this laid out more clearly. And I was at that Parks meeting and I'm more fuddled than ever about that issue.
Well, you know, Joan, I totally appreciate, and I'll be quite honest, I haven't put anything in the paper because we're waiting from the Parks Department and the legal department. And I didn't want to put something out that might be contradicted, wrong, or I just felt this thing is so premature that I was waiting until I had, frankly, in some cases, to your point, absolute facts, because
Yeah.
I found the last park meeting a little confusing. And then we haven't heard back from either the legal team or the parks chair. So honestly, as soon as I get some clarification, I think your idea has great merit and I will do that.
Okay, thank you, because I really feel like I can't make a judgment because I'm not, there's a lot I'm not clear about.
Right. And
I have two other issues I
to,
want to just briefly bring up.
yes, sorry.
One is, you mentioned the Bacon Woods. I had to bow out from that because helping the Bronx River Alliance cut vines, which I love to do, I got terrible poison ivy. And poison ivy is a horrible problem. And, you know, it's all, Ellen had said it was all over Bacon Woods. And another friend who was going to join me with that also had to bow out. You know, I mean, goats eat poison ivy. Can we do something? And I realize it's not just a municipality. I mean, ideally, the county and the state would be doing something about this. But, you know, it's impacting so terribly. And I'm afraid it's already too out of control to do something. But if we could add, to me, this is worth allocating money for. Because, and then you get more volunteers to do the other things that need to be done. I mean, I'm passionate about the environment, about saving trees, but, you know, I can't risk dying or going blind with poison ivy. So, you know, I just hope something can be done about that. And the third thing is about littering, which, you know, I wrote a letter to my hometown Bronxville about that. But when we had our recent Earth Day thing, I was just appalled at how much litter and cigarette butts there were at the train station. And isn't that the MTA's responsibility to take care of them? And I go up as the Lone Ranger Green Angel with my picker-upper to pick up cigarette butts. But, you know, I've talked to you, Mary, about ticketing people about littering. I never see anybody littering. So I don't know who's doing it and whether it's residents or not, but, you know, this is really a problem. And I mean, we're all getting poisoned by this. What can we do here?
You know what, Joan, you will prompt me. I will call the county about the poison ivy because I was up at Bacon Woods and there was a lot of poison ivy. Yeah. And I will also call Metro North because I agree with you. I've started going back on the trains and the littering is pretty bad. So thank you. You will galvanize me to do that.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate it.
I will. Any other public?
Mayor, I think there was another gentleman with his hand up.
Yes, and then Priscilla Newman had her hand up as well. Who would like to go first? Jim Palmer or Priscilla? Why don't you speak?
Okay.
Hello.
So I have a couple things. One very parochial, but on the garage situation, I would just hope that residents in Bronxville will receive some analysis on needs, on revenue to the village, and so that we'll have an opportunity to really understand kind of all the metrics involved in this. And I appreciate the openness that everyone has had this evening. So, but I just think those are things that every village resident would appreciate. Secondly, I want to add my support for the smoking ban. And then thirdly, I have a very parochial request, and that is I live at the corner of Pondfield and 22, and there is a bus stop on the northwest corner of 22 and Pondfield, which does not have a garbage receptacle. And there's so much garbage there.
Okay.
I go and pick it up a lot.
Okay.
But we really need, there is one on the bus stop to the kind of catty corner to it, but we really need something there.
Okay.
But in any event, I support the smoking ban, and I would love to have, as this analysis furthers or progresses on the garage. I would love to understand better what the needs are, what Lawrence Hospital is doing, what it means for revenue to the village, so that we can all make really informed decisions about it.
I think when and if there's a concrete plan, that's absolutely our duty as
Right,
trustees.
exactly.
I think, I don't disagree. I think everyone, that's part of the analysis, and it's our duty to get it to you, and we will.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you very much. I appreciate all of the work you do. All
Thank
of you,
you.
all the trustees. Thank you
Thank
so much.
you. And Jim Palmer, you said there was another gentleman, I think. I didn't see a hand.
Hey, Mary, I just want to address Priscilla, absolutely. And I think there's substantial question in my mind, Priscilla, if we're going to get there.
Yeah.
If it can make sense. I don't know. I don't know if it can make sense. I don't know if it does make sense. So there's so much work to do, so much to explore, but none of that has been addressed at this point. None, zero. So that this is not even at the starting line in terms of trying to figure that out.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for your work. I appreciate it.
I think that was it, Mary. The other gentleman's, I don't think is on the.
Oh, yes, there is. Is it Sid?
Oh,
Yes, hi.
Hi, Sid.
Good evening, everyone. Village resident, specifically in the Avalon. So I'm in the neighborhood that we're talking about. My question has to do with whether or not there's been a public safety analysis conducted, both in terms of what the additional needs from a policing perspective would be if there was a multi-level parking garage, but also any analysis of what it might mean for the area. And the reason I bring this up is that Paxton Avenue by the park after dark is literally one of the most remote, quiet, and dark places in the village, particularly in winter. It's a route that I walk my dog on in the evening, and it might be the only place in the village that I feel a little physically insecure. Not just me, but my wife as well, when we do walk our dog. And so the idea of having a lot more traffic and sort of corners and darkened spaces in that area is a little concerning.
Thank you. And no, we haven't done that because honestly, we put the brakes on spending because we have this deed issue, we think, and we're just waiting for, as I said, both parks and county legal. So we didn't want to spend village funds if the entire concept was going to be a non-starter. But that would absolutely have to be part of the analysis and the equation.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Abbott, you have your hand up. Good evening.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I wanted to say, so my name is Sean Abbott. I publish as Brer Abbott for the Bronxville Surrealist. And I just wanted to follow up on Jennifer Caleo's point about New York Presbyterian thinking that it can assess itself aside one of our churches. I doubt any of our churches brings in, these are the 2017 numbers, which is the best we can get so far. 5.7 billion in revenue. New York Presbyterian is Lawrence Hospital. New York Presbyterian came up to our little village and took over our little community hospital. 5.7 billion in revenue. Their big boss, Stephen J. Corwin, president and CEO, is the $7,407,452 man per annum. So if New York Presbyterian is saying that they can't help our village with taxes because our churches don't, that's as false an analogy as it gets. I think it's very important that we observe that.
In fairness, I should clarify, we didn't go forward, and I want to be really careful because my recollection, the thought was to try to have a use district for help on some of the taxes, some of the services we give to our nonprofits. And My recollection is Lawrence, we never really got past tossing the idea out. And we also frankly did not want to toss it towards our churches. And so I think in fairness, I take responsibility for sort of stopping the conversation at a very nebulous point. So Sean, if there was a mistake made on not pursuing the hospital, it was mine.
Oh, well, I wasn't making that presumption at all, Your Honor.
No,
I was
that's
merely,
the truth. I mean,
no, but I was just merely observing, because when Jennifer said that, I just immediately looked it up and said, oh, well, look at these 2017 numbers. And there's no church. You could combine all the what's put in all the plates of all the churches in our village, and it doesn't begin to get near that. And I am personally offended by these monstrous corporations describing themselves as nonprofits. It's obscene. It's an obscenity. I just want to notice that, again, our talk is of parking and therefore of cars, and mainly tonight. And I reread an excellent essay by Eloise Morgan in Building a Suburban Village about the Bronxville trolley, because I wanted to share at this meeting something I didn't follow up at last month's meeting. I sound like an insane person when I say, well, let's just get rid of these parking lots. Let's get rid of these parking lots. As if that's a solution. It's not a solution. So the idea is to provide a solution, an alternative for villagers to driving. You have to drive your car here, there, and everywhere and park it. We need all these parking lots. I don't know when was the last time a trustee was at Disney World, and maybe this is a false memory for me, but I remember maybe when I was there as a kid, there were these lovely little trolleys, little streetcars, little trolleys that didn't run on tracks, and they just kind of went around like little toy trolley streetcars in Disney World. And I've been thinking, and I've been looking and studying this very carefully. That would be an excellent solution for Bronxville. It would put us on the map if we had a transportation alternative that you could just hop on, hop off, and then we could start looking at reduction of parking spaces. And I wanted to emphasize that point, which I will expand on because there's more to say about it. Mayor, I sent to you earlier today an email about this smoking in public.
I answered you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't see the answer. And I apologize also because I must be missing email alerts as to the working meeting and because I missed the working meeting and I missed the budget meeting. And I know Jim is good about sending out email alerts if you sign up for them. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Palmer, for those alerts. But I just wanted to say about smoking. I'm calling you from Skunk City, USA. Now, I totally approve of the legalization of marijuana, so long as I don't have to smell it. And I hope when you're describing smoking, you're also including cannabis in with tobacco. I want to say that now. I'll say it again at the next meeting because it's a horrific odor. It's horrific. And this is my question, Mayor, and then I'll stop talking. Is there any possibility that Bronxville Village could lead the way and say, you can't smoke on our sidewalks? Is there something that prohibits the I understand about thank you about mentioning the school's domain in this, but is there anything preventing the village from saying, there's just no smoking on our narrow sidewalks? Sorry.
In fact, and we will make sure you get noticed. That's the kind of conversation of the day that the trustees and I are having, whether this parks ban can extend. And we've been talking with council about this. Is that a fair assessment, council, that it's in our conversation as to whether it can be extended to busy streets, benches, things like that? And we did discuss it a bit at at the work session, and we will continue to do so.
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Abbott.
Just have-
Any other, yes, Betsy Harding. You are, you're mute.
Betsy, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Muted.
Betsy, we cannot, yep.
Mute. Got it. Okay. Are the Lawrence Hospital employees able to get merchant parking permits? I looked at the village website and it wasn't completely clear to me because the, it sort of refers to businesses in the regulation, but then the actual application form says, what's the name of the organization that has, or the officer within an organization that will certify that the person is an employee and, working in Bronxville. So I just wondered if the hospital employees are able to get merchant permits.
Betsy, Mr. Palmer, I do not know the answer to that question. Mr. Palmer, have they ever asked for them?
I don't know if they've ever asked for them, but yes, they would be able to get a permit because yes, the employee would simply be able to provide the documentation that they work with the hospital. So my guess is, well, actually, there probably are some doctors that work at the hospital that have merchant permits in the garage. So yes, some have.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Are there any more hands? Jim Krulis, correct? Do I see your hand up?
Yes, you do, Mayor.
Hi, how are you?
Fine. I don't know if you remember, but probably the last time that we met
Yep.
face to face, we were knee deep in water
Yes.
at Stone Place. So I'm sort of curious why they've decided, other than that they have maybe control of the property, why they're even looking at that property as far as parking is concerned.
Well, you know what? It's a flood zone, and to tell you the truth, the only people looking at that are people who feel like they could move cars, because to your point, you and I did stand in knee deep water, and the use down there, I can't tell you how many other businesses looked at that property and said no interest. So the idea is that a movable car with some level of warning is the only thing that would work there, because it is a flood zone.
I'm going to apologize. I missed the first 10 minutes of the meeting.
Yeah.
And I understand that you did have some comments about it, but is there any kind of maximum number of parking spaces they're looking for?
No, you know what? We're not even, there was a conceptual drawing. I don't know the answer, to tell you the truth. And neither Mr. Palmer and I were talking about that today, that we haven't gotten that far in the conversation.
But there is comment of six levels. Is that correct?
There was a conceptual drawing of a 5-level with a rooftop that we were hoping to make it a recreational, but again, this was the drawing to spark the conversation. It is not a proposal.
No, I understand that. It's just that it just seems to me that 6 levels is sort of not in keeping with almost anything in the village. I mean, obviously, if we're talking about parking, I mean, even Kensington Road, which was a significant a number of levels of parking, never got that high. So, I mean, as far as levels of parking is concerned, so it really concerns me that they even brought up the subject, considering that, I believe one of the other speakers mentioned that it's a multi-billion-dollar operation. You'd think that they would take into consideration what the area around their specific proposal looks like. It just seems that it's really out of character. I mean, I don't want to even comment about how we went through with the expansion of the hospital. All I can tell you is that I believe Mr. Fredericks mentioned that he was on the zoning board at the time when they were going to,
Yeah.
and all I can tell you is we said from day one that the streetscape along West Pondfield Road was going to be really bad. They urbanized that streetscape. It was, it was really unfortunate. I think they could have done a better job doing that. But aside from that, I'm just gonna stop commenting right now.
Okay.
And
Nice
We'll
to speak
we'll
with
see you. We'll see. Oh, by the way, is there any talk about in-person meetings? It provided everybody is vaccinated, and I mean, obviously 6 feet apart in an enclosed space.
You know what, we just had that conversation again, and we're looking towards well, having a discussion whether June or July, because the trustees, frankly, we all prefer the in-person meetings. So that's under discussion, and as soon as we can, we will, because that's our preference as well.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, I think I don't see any other comments, okay, seeing none, then I just need a motion to close our May meeting and to meet again on June 14th. Do I have a motion? Moved by trustee Behrens and a second by trustee Knapp. And all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. See everyone in June, and thank you, everyone.